Alright, so for this week's project we're going to be taking a look at this Toshiba model SR-F451 belt drive turntable. And while we're waiting for parts for the Pioneer RT909, I went ahead and picked this up from my friend's shop last night. This was in a stack of turntables that had been gathering there for a while. And I took this basically because even though I knew Toshiba did make a few model of turntables, I never really worked on one, so just a little curiosity more than anything else. This one doesn't look to be in horrible shape. The only real problem here, right off the get-go, is that someone removed the hinges from the dust cover, so it doesn't have any hinges on it, which I'm sure will affect the overall selling price when we get ready to put this up for sale. I don't know anything about it. It may work, it may not, probably don't. It's been sitting there probably for 10 years, if not more than that at this point. So it looks like a pretty straightforward 1980s model belt drive turntable. As always, we'll come in, we'll have a look at the controls they got around the front here. There is a pitch control on this one. I wasn't able to identify the cartridge in this, so I'm not sure what that is. But the stylus does look to be intact. In the event that it's not, we'll put another cartridge in it and see if we can get a record spinning on it and see what it sounds like. Our intro music this week, we're checking out the 1980 solo album by Pete Townsend entitled Empty Glass, and we're listening to the lead track from this. This is called Rough Boys. Let's hear a little bit of this, and then we'll get started on the Toshiba turntable.
What can I do? I'm so pale and weedy, rough bits in my hush puppy shoes, that I'm still bleeding, fighting, whining, shining.
All right, let's pick back up. We'll have a look at the front of the unit. Starting off over on the left, they've branded their name on the front of this very clean looking aluminum. And it wasn't that clean in the beginning, but when I first seen this, it had a very peeling, tarnished piece of plastic that was covering its newness. And so I went ahead and peeled that off, make it look a little bit better. Right underneath this edge right here, we have a pitch control, followed by our speed 33 and 45, size of the record obviously. Repeat, cut, and start are your buttons here. We'll go ahead and remove this dust cover. I'll show you what we found out about this. Try to do this one-handed without breaking the dust cover or the turntable. And if you look on the back of this, what would happen sometimes is these plastic mounts that the hinge would screw into would break, and so the customer would just take the hinges off and use it as a simple dust cover. But this situation here, the glass is not broke at all, so it was done intentionally. And what may have been the case is the customer may have had this in a cabinet that had very low clearance in the top, and so instead of a lid raising up, there wasn't enough clearance for that. They removed the hinges so it could just be lifted off and pulled out from the front. So that may have been one possibility. And of course, if that was the case, the hinges definitely long lost in time, never to come back. Looking at the platter is pretty heavy. I pulled it off. It's got a pretty ratty belt on it, but it is still intact. It's going to need to be changed, but it is still there. And as for this, Again, I wasn't really, it does look familiar to me, but I wasn't really able to place who makes this. Maybe Audio-Technica, maybe. There's a number on the stylus. I guess we could cross-reference it that way. This thing is not going to pick that number up, though, probably. I'm not sure what that is. 2890D, maybe? Anyway, yeah, it does sort of look familiar to me, but I'm not quite sure who makes that. But the needle is there, of course. This thing ain't gonna show it. So I don't know. We'll have to get it hooked up and see if we can figure out what's going on. Maybe it works. So I think the next thing to do, let's go ahead and get some power hooked up to it. We'll go ahead and route it over to the mixer and put our test record on it and see if we can get any sound out of this thing. So give me a moment for that, and we'll pick back up. All right, I'm coming back in with you. Got the unit plugged in over here, and we have got nothing. Nothing happening whatsoever. We move this out here. We hit start. Nothing. No light. No nothing. So I'm not sure if the switch, you can tell when you move the tone arm that there is a switch there that's activating. So not sure what's going on with all that. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll remove the platter. We'll take off the head shell, flip it over, and get the bottom of it off and see if we can figure out what's happening. So give me a moment for that, and we'll pick back up. All right, picking back up with you now. Got the unit turned upside down, remove the bottom cover so we can get to everything and kind of get a look at what's happening here. And there ain't much going on. We do have a small transformer here. There's the DC motor. Wiring comes over to a small speed control board. Right next to that, there's the potentiometer for the pitch control. And then we have the speed switch between 33 and 45. So kind of what gets everything going, and let's see if we can get over here a little bit. There's two red wires that feed back into the mechanism. They go over to this point right here, and we'll see if we can zoom in there just a little bit. And that's what triggers the AC line coming in to start everything happening. And basically, right there at the very edge is the actuator for that switch, and it is stuck in one position, stuck in the in position, which probably means there's something wrong with the switch. But what we can do is we could do continuity check on it, and I have already done this. Let's see if we can get you over there. We just kind of tap on our leads to where that switch goes. Turn our meter on, we'll hear a beep. Okay, and so we'll put it over here on the other terminal of the switch, other wire of the switch, and as I make my way back over to here, no matter what I do, that switch doesn't move, and so therefore we don't ever get any continuity running through that. So I'm going to say that that's going to be the first place that we're going to want to open up and take a look. I think before we do that, because it doesn't look like this is going to be fun to get apart, to be quite honest with you. There are some screws that hold the whole thing down, but there's a lot of levers and rods and stuff coming out of this, so I'm not sure how many parts is going to go boing and go flying everywhere when I try to remove this. So before we do that, let's jump over the switch, let's flip it back over, and we'll plug it in and see if we can get the motor running. So let's check that first, because in the event that we would have a motor that's got an issue, the last thing I want to do is dump a bunch of time into taking this apart and getting that switch out. So let's do that, and then we'll pick back up and see if we got a motor that runs. All right, so picking back up with you. Basically all I did was place a jumper wire across the two lines going to that micro switch that actually gets things rolling. When you move the arm off of the rest position, the platter will take off and start moving, or if you hit the start button, the same thing will happen. It will trigger that switch, get the platter to start moving, and then pick the arm up automatically and do it. So No big deal. Platter's rotating, light is on, and we have our favorite test record, Thin Lizzy Renegade here. We're gonna play a song off of. One thing I noticed is that if this repeat switch is not in the on position, it won't automatically go over the way it's supposed to. That gives me a good indication that we have something kind of gunked up with hardened grease, which we'll be dealing with once we get all the other little problems taken care of. But let's check out a little bit of the mystery cartridge here.
They say people out in Hollywood live their life out in black and white. They're living out a technicolor dream. Next day they're a star overnight. Not like in New York. Man, it's tougher. Not like in London town.
So yeah, it does work. It sounds all right. Again, not real sure what cartridge it is, but it doesn't sound too bad. Looks to be old, so it's probably the original one that came stock with the unit when it was new. Dirty speed control here, or pitch control, that's going to need to be taken care of. But you can still get it kind of in the position it needs to be in, so you can get a regulated speed. 45 works just fine, kicks up to that speed with no trouble. So I think all of this is just delaying the inevitable of having to take that mechanism apart to get down to where that switch is at. There's a lot of moving pieces in it, especially all the connecting rods that connect all this stuff up, or at least these three pieces anyway. So I'm a little, delaying that a little bit before I have to take all that apart. But I'll go ahead and set the camera back overhead. We'll flip it back upside down, and we'll go ahead and see if we can ease it apart and slip that switch out of there. We'll have a look at the switch. Possibly we might be able to fix it, but if not, I probably do have one that we can use in that. So give me a moment for that, and we'll pick back up. All right, as we pick back up, went ahead and spun the whole thing around so I have access to this side of it from the front where I'm sitting, and I've just kind of been looking around here to see what goes where, and I'm hoping that we're going to take this board off for the RCA cables going into the tone arm connections, and I'm hoping that I can raise this up just enough, maybe, that we can get this switch out of here. Maybe. But it does have a wire tie there, and I've got this thing propped up on a couple of VHS-C tapes so I can work on it without it dragging on the carpet and being unlevel. So for the moment, I'm just gonna leave this for the moment. Now let's move on to some of these screws over here. Maybe a little better screwdriver. Pretty long screws. Trying to hold on to this thing to keep it from buckling like it's doing right now. There we go. Might be a little better. Did notice a bumper piece there. It's all gooed up. So I suppose that'll need to be addressed. Feels like it wants to come up. Oh, we got one more screw. Not too bad. I noticed that came out. I assume that'll go back in there correctly, the way it's supposed to. There's where we want to get to, right there. But I just got a feeling this thing is going to force me to take it all the way out. Probably. I want to be cautious of these things. I don't want to start bending those things up. Then all of a sudden those won't work. All right. Now that's going to give us a little bit more play this way to get this thing up. Try to keep that out of the goo, maybe, if I can. And that should be good enough. And I'm going to put something underneath this to kind of hold it up. I guess that tape will be just fine. That would give me access. I've got this up high enough now that I could slip a screwdriver in there and get that switch out. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Let me re-steady my tapes here. I've got this thing propped up on. Yeah, that one's not going to do it though. I think I know what might do it. I've got a side angle 1/4 inch type of socket wrench. I think that and a Phillips bit should probably do the trick. This is kind of got like kind of a 1/4 inch bend in it, or excuse me, it has a, whatever you call that, 90 degree. So it should be just enough. Not that I'm opposed to taking the whole thing out. That may be still something that has to happen because of the gunked up levers. But for now, I just want to deal with this switch and not have to be contending with all these levers and rods over here. And there we go. And it's like it doesn't feel horrible. but apparently just not making a connection. It does look like it's possible to take it apart. I'll tell you what, let me get all of this out of my way, and I'll pick back up with you, and we'll take the switch apart and see if there's anything we can do about it. So give me a moment for that. All right, picking back up with you, and just taking a look at this thing. As I remember when it was in the unit and we first looked at this, that the actual plunger part was actually stuck in and wasn't popping back out, but now it does seem to be doing that. So I'm wondering if we run another continuity test there. Let's get a meter, get it hooked up. I wonder if it'll work now. But that still doesn't matter if it was stuck inside. Is stuck in normally open or normally closed? I guess that's a good question to ask. You would think stuck in would be normally closed, right? Does it tell us what terminals do what? It does. Let me see here. So normally open is this position. Yeah, the outward position would be normally open according to what's written on here. So we shouldn't have any continuity at this point. I got our terminals hooked back up. And see, now it's working. So I don't know if there was a reason that wasn't popping out, because that piece was moving out of the way. The piece on the mechanism was moving out of the way. But it doesn't make any difference. If it was pushed in, this thing should have been turning. So yeah, I'm not sure. Let's open the switch up and have a look at it. Hopefully we can do this without breaking it. Okay. Let's flip it back over. Yeah, I see some pretty nasty contacts here. I don't know what this thing will let you see, but I see some pretty nasty contacts here. They look pretty black right there. It doesn't explain why this thing was stuck in though, unless one of the contacts was kind of welded to the other one. Let's see if we can take these out ever so gently. Yeah, they don't look too good. That looks definitely looks better. Now, what are the chances of getting the other one out of here without destroying it? You can tell that they're either glued in or they're kind of stuck in there with something. Trying to get that first one out was kind of difficult to do. I'm going to try to pry up from the back side this time. There we go. Oh yeah, you can tell there's something got, because this side's not even being used. This is the side that goes up against this piece. I wonder if those two pieces are interchangeable. They do look like it, don't they?